Well, today, my message is entitled All Wrapped Up. And our text is going to be out of 1 Samuel 25:29. And 1 Samuel 25:29 says, "Men may rise to pursue you and seek your life. But my Lord's life shall be wrapped up safe among the living in care of the eternal your God. As for the lives of your enemies, he will fling them away like stones out of a sling." And this is from the Moffat, James Moffat translation. I think it gives a little better sense of what's going on here. Now, in this verse, the real big word here is security. Everybody in the world is seeming to look for some kind of security, whether it's the security of our borders, the security of our family, the security of our friends, some group that we belong to. Everybody seems to need some type of security. A lot of you are familiar with the Peanuts comic strip, and Linus always had a little security blanket. Snoopy was always trying to steal it, and he would just have a meltdown because he couldn't keep a hold of that security blanket. And that's like people today. We need something to feel secure in. That's why there's so many people today in the world who are struggling, because they have nothing that really gives them security. Now, your life will be wrapped up safe, and it's not going to be wrapped up safe by, some awkward clerk in a store with a little bow on you, and when you walk out the door, all of your wrappings are going to fall off down on the street corner. That's not what we're talking about. But you are going to be wrapped up and secure by the fingers of God. And you're going to be addressed to a destination with the words on your forehead, "In care of the eternal." Now, you might want to ask the question, why would God do this for me? The answer is simply God doesn't want you to be lost. He doesn't want anybody to be lost. You are important in God's eyes. He's created us, so He has a dog in the hunt. You represent a large investment. God has created the whole universe just for you. If you were the only person here, it would have been done for you. So this is a very large investment on God's part to even do this for you. You're an eternal soul. You are an imperishable personality. You are a creature of destiny. You are something to care about. That's why God would do this all for you. And believe me, this concern is not limited to just us here, high-class individuals that we are. It reaches down to the lowly person in the gutter, in the street. The lowest of the low. Years ago, it laid hold of a young man, a drunkard, as he staggered to the Chicago River to drown himself. But tender arms carried himself instead to the old Pacific Mission. And then Mel Trotter was all wrapped up in a bundle of a life with God. Mel Trotter became one of the greatest mission workers in the field, in the world. Now, let me tell you, God doesn't want one sinner to be lost. Not one. God says there's something worth saving in every woman and every man alive on the earth. And God doesn't want any nation to be lost. You know, TJ mentioned Japan. And one of the greatest tragedies in the world was when World War II was over and Admiral MacArthur gave the order or the request to please send Christian workers to Japan because the people needed. The church responded with, heck no. We won't go. They are not worth saving. They attacked us. They killed our men. We will not go. And therefore, less than 2% of Japan are believers today. When the whole nation could have been believers. But God doesn't want that. That's why He cried out to Israel, return to me and I will return to you. He doesn't want any city to be lost, any community. And He weeps and mourns over our community today as He did over Jerusalem 2,100 years ago or longer. How often would I have gathered thy children together, but ye would not, God said. God doesn't want a man or a woman in our community right here to be lost. And that's why He said to the palsied sinner, thy sins be forgiven thee. And He said to the woman on the street, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. That's addressed to the people in the community. The same Messiah that had asked His disciples to gather up the crumbs after He fed the people so that nothing would be lost is the same blessed good shepherd who's come to seek and to save that which is lost. Us. Our people, our friends, our relatives around us. This explains His compassion, His patience, His concern. It explains the manger. It explains the tears shed at Gethsemane. It explains the crown of thorns and the cry from the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. None of this would have happened if God had not cared for you. You know, we often forget. I do a lot of ancestry work in genealogy, and I like to know where I come from. And it's interesting. And as I've been studying my wife and I's genealogy, there's been so many instances that if this child had not lived, we wouldn't be here. If this man had not lived, we wouldn't be here. If they hadn't survived this or that, I wouldn't be here. God has a plan for us. We have survived thousands of years of genealogy to come to here. He wants us here for some reason, and we have to ask God why. This text in 1 Samuel is taken from the life of King David. And David had been hiding from the wrath of King Saul. And he happened to be the devil-possessed father-in-law of David. And during these months of hiding, the flocks of a rich man named Nabal had been feeding in the valley below his hiding place. And David, being a shepherd himself, he kind of liked sheep. And he took care of them and protected this flock. And when it became sheep shearing season, I guess he got a little hungry, so David sent some of his men, 10 of them, down to the owner of these sheep to ask for some supplies for his soldiers and himself. But the rich man, I guess he was just an ornery old farmer and shepherd, He said, who is this man David that I should feed him? Why should I care? Well, he didn't think about David had been watching over his flock, protecting his robe. He didn't think about that God had anointed David to be king. All he asked was, who is this man? I don't know him. He's nothing to me. But this response so angers David that he swears to kill Nabal. But fortunately for Nabal, he had a wife who was intelligent. Her name was Abigail. And she's as fine a woman as her husband was mean and ornery. And so she apparently has to do the thinking for Nabal because he wasn't thinking too clearly. So she has to bail his hot-tempered personality out again, probably for an umpteenth time. But this time it was serious because David would have killed him. But she knows that Nabal has asked for it. So she loads up her donkeys and puts lots of gifts and food on there and rides out to meet David. She met David and she conquered the king with kindness and forgiveness in her mouth. She excused her husband, saying, don't mind him. Nabal is always putting his foot in his mouth. Okay? One of these days, someone's going to take a poke at him and probably kill him. But David, if you kill him, you will have murder on your conscience. And David began wavering. And seeing his hesitancy, Abigail flung out this great inspired word at him, and something she is still saying to us down through the centuries, and something that makes life different. Something that takes us out of the bargain basement, so to speak. She says, David, if you turn from your evil ways, if you lay aside that spirit of revenge, if you surrender your life unto God, and if you turn over your destiny to Him, then because of His love for you, because of His tender concern that He has that nothing shall be lost, your life shall be wrapped up and started towards its divine fulfillment. That woman Abigail spoke the truth. Because when he did that, his life did turn. You see, we're all wrapped up in something. I know people who are completely wrapped up in themselves. And that's too bad because it'll make an awful small package. And I know many of you know a lot of people like that. They're great in their own mind, but pretty small in everybody else's mind. They live absolutely for themselves. To give $5 for any charitable deed or even into a church plate or anything would be unheard of. But they don't mind spending everything they have on themselves. Some people are wrapped up in possessions. Unless they have everything they want right now, they're unhappy. And we took our granddaughter to the mall yesterday, and she was looking at some of the toys and wanting this and that for Christmas, and we said, well, you just see what Santa Claus brings. And she goes, but I want it now. And it's kind of funny, but that's how people are. They want something now. because we're kind of spoiled. They're big kids with big toys. And people cry when you take these toys away, and people will go into severe depression when they lose their possessions. They don't know what it is to be without. Now, years ago, a man saw a small child sliding down a small hill on a cold winter's day with a single ski. And the guy went up and said, "See here, Sonny, you're supposed to ski with 2 skis." And the boy replied, "Well, I know it, but I ain't got but 1 ski, mister, and you can have a barrel of fun with just 1 ski." But folks wrapped up in possessions wouldn't know anything about this kind of fun, because if they don't have the proper tool, they don't know what to do. If they don't have the proper toys, they don't know how to be popular. And we could learn a lesson from this boy. We have to learn how to have fun with what God gives us. We have become so wrapped up in new cars and new homes and new this and that we've lost our sense of fairness and our sense of appreciation for what God has blessed us with. We look around us and we think, well, we don't have this new car, so I must not be blessed somehow. Well, look around in your own life and see what God has given you and give God praises for that. When we start praising God for what we have been given, maybe God will give us something else to appreciate. But we have to learn how to appreciate where we're at. Now, there's those around us who are all wrapped up in their social lives, their parties, clubbing, nightlife. And you don't have to look far to see people wrapped up in their money. I know a lot of them. But I need to explain something. Money, and especially hoarded money, makes for a frail covering in the storms of life. And I got to tell you, it wasn't really until I watched a movie called Schindler's List that I learned what money was about. And in the end of it, he was just crying and saying, if I just had $1 more, I could buy 1 more life out of the death camps. You see, money is a tool. That's all it is. And I guarantee you, all of us in here have used a tool for the wrong purpose. We've used a screwdriver to open something, and instead of using it to turn a screw. We've used a pair of pliers for a hammer instead of using a hammer. But every tool has a purpose. And money is not a tool to be hoarded away. It's a tool to be used for what God has it given it to us for. And we have to ask God what it is. Money is one of the least secure things in life. And I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, easy come, easy go. And money is just like that. The text in Samuel also has a second lesson for us, and that all of these wrappings that I've mentioned fail because they somehow become untied. They never last until your journey through life is ended, and they afford a false sense of security. You only have to stand by a few deathbeds to see how flimsy some of people's packages that they carry with them in life are. Most people who are dying apart from God cry out for some sort of security, something that gives them hope as they're dying and will not let them fall apart and feel doomed when they die. And you may ask yourself, well, is there such a thing as real security? And I'll tell you, yes, there is. And it's a wrapping that holds. I have an anchor that is steadfast and sure. There is a wrapping that won't come to pieces. No fingers are strong enough in the flesh to break the cords of those wrappings. Jesus said, "They whom the Father hath given me are mine. No man is able to break back my fingers and take them from my hands." Do you believe that, my friends? Are you taking and staking your life upon what Jesus said here? Have you found your security in God? It's hard for us because we live in a fleshly world, but we have to learn to immerse ourselves in the security of God. I love the words here to the song, "Rock of ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee." We have to learn how to immerse ourselves and hide ourselves within God. But do you cry out, "No, this is slavery. This is like being tied to your mother's apron strings. We can't do anything"? But this is a paradox for most people. They don't understand how God works. The only thing that will really free you is the thing that really binds you. And consider, if you will, the following. The scientist is free because he is bound hand and foot to the truth. Or he's supposed to be, put it that way. The artist is free to paint or draw anything that he wants to paint or draw. But if he's free to draw a horse with a cow's head and 6 legs, it won't be a horse. Don't know what it will be, but it ain't going to be a horse. A musician can strike any chord he or she pleases. Many of them do, but few people listen to disharmonious music because it becomes not music, it's just noise. Because musicians, if you want to call yourself a musician, you're bound by the rules of musics. Musts. The music musts have to follow. You have to play a chord in such a way that it's harmonious, because disharmony becomes noise. Things that are abstract and you can't figure out what it is may appeal to some people, but most people look at it and go, "What am I looking at?" You have to listen to me on this thing, and that is, believers are free because we are bound, just as the Apostle Paul said, "I am a bondservant to Jesus Christ." Paul put himself, swore bondage to Jesus, and could never ever take himself out of that bondage. That's what that word means. We are free, men and women, free from care, free from defeat and death, but only when we are bound in the bundle of life within God. In Him is freedom to realize at last our fondest and noblest dreams. We are wrapped up within God. Security. Here is a pledge of a day when we shall all be that which we are eternally destined to be. Now, I'm not sure if any of you here are painters. I think Isaac is back here, but when you paint a picture, how do you really paint the waves of the sea as they're coming towards shore and breaking, and suddenly that light comes through the waves and the color just changes? How do you get that on canvas? It's almost an impossibility. I mean, artists try, and some of them are really good. But to see this magical transformation in life is almost unspeakable. How do you show this? You see it, but you can't really portray it the way it is, because the painting is static. It's one frame out of a moving picture. I know I'm built for bigger and better things every day in life, but wrapped up in God, at some point in my life, I will realize all that God has for me to be. But I'm happy today at where I am in life, because I'm wrapped up within God today. And folks, God is the only supreme fact in the universe.
Amen.
That's it. You and I will never get away from this singular fact. We'll never find true rest until we find true rest within God and His existence. We'll never have meaning in our lives until we find such meaning within the fellowship we have with God. We have to have a fellowship with Him. You need to make your commitment to God now. You have to need and trust in Him now. You have to need to rest your soul within Him now. And you have to trust Him confidently and unafraid now. We can't sit back and say, well, I can do this anytime. No, it has to be done now, because we exist now. Traveling many years ago on a train, and this was pretty common practice many years ago, there was a small lad that had a tag around his neck marked, "In care of the station agent, San Francisco." Why did they have tags? Well, because the lad was traveling alone, and he didn't know his way about, and his parents were concerned about him and wanted him to be watched over so he would arrive safely to his destination at the San Francisco station. Now, folks, one day soon we will all go on a long journey as well. We're going to be traveling alone, away from our earthly families. We won't know the language of this traveling method. We've never done it before. But we'll get to our destination because we will have stamped on our forehead the imperishable description and inscription, "In care of the eternal God, your God." It's indelibly stamped on us. All wrapped up. Are you ready? Your life shall be all wrapped up, safe among the living, in care of our eternal Father and God. This is your privilege as a child of God. All you have to do is accept God's wrappings. And that's the issue that we have to face today. Are we wanting to be wrapped up in God, within His totality, everything He has, His existence? Are we willing to walk into that existence and dwell there? That's what He wants. He asked the children of Israel at Mount Sinai, "I want all of you to come up here and dwell with me in my intent in my existence. He wanted everybody to be there. The only one that was willing to step out and go was Moses. We have to take that step out and go dwell with God. I know everybody here has probably accepted Christ as their Savior. But have you taken that step to say, I want to dwell within you? That's what we have to struggle with every day, is trying to dwell with God. That's what he's saying to us there in 1 Samuel. He wants us to be wrapped up with him and wrap our lives and enmesh with him in a personal way. And we've all had relationships on an earthly basis. And in the same way our relationships are on an earthly basis, that's how we need to relate to God. He is our partner. He is our everything. When He speaks, we understand. Before we speak, He knows what we're thinking, and He finishes our sentences. That's the kind of relationship we need to have with God. Is there anybody here that needs us to have prayer with them today? For any reason? Well, I want to have special prayer for B. And why don't we at this time, anybody that wants to lay hands on B and pray for him and his continued recovery.